Life is full of surprises. I mean, who would have thought people will like a four-door coupe? This is the second generation Mercedes-Benz CLS. It's based on the E-Class, from which it is 10 to 20% more expensive depending on the engine version. I remember the first generation CLS was so ugly that the designer should be carried on the bonnet, sort of like a hunting trophy. I know a few people who liked the first generation CLS, and if they're watching me now, they're about to find out I have no respect for them whatsoever.
Now you probably expect me to start kicking the new CLS, to criticize it and make fun of it. A week ago this is exactly what I would do, but that was before I actually drove the CLS. I'm ashamed to admit it, but over the years I never had a chance to actually even get a good look at it from up close. I just turned my head away in disgust as it passed away. I preferred the miniature version, the CLA, and I thought only an idiot will pay upwards of 55,000 euros for a car that should be two-door, but then the wife would kick him out of the house. There are light years between the first and the second generation of the CLS. The first generation looked heavy, like it would break in the middle. The new generation is designed to look lighter, more sporty, like a proper coupe. But there are still the ponton-like rear wheel arches, which you get in the E-Class. In the front, besides this wonderful grille, we have optional multi-beam LED headlights which automatically change the beam to avoid blinding the oncoming drivers.
The boot is 475 liters, which is the middle of its class. Yes, it's class. The CLS started the premium four-door coupe segment, which now includes cars like the Audi A7, which, by the way, is a pretty good car, and the BMW 6 Series Gran Coupe. By the way, both of these cars are even bigger than the CLS, which is already bigger than the E-Class on which it is based.
The boot is relatively flat but very deep. Folding seats are often an option in the premium segment, and that's the case here too. Under the boot floor there is no mini spare, not even a repair kit. Instead, there is an AdBlue tank, because this is a BlueTec. Chances are the CLS owner will not want to change his tire anyway. He'll prefer to sit in the back. And in the back it's very business class. There's huge storage between the two separate seats. After all, it's a coupe, which, by the way, did not stop Volkswagen from offering an optional 3-people bench in the CC. There are cup holders in the armrest. I think I could get used to this. In the front, the upper side of the dashboard looks like in the new C-Class, the bottom is still like in the E-Class. I know the tablet-like screen on top of the dashboard is a love or hate thing, and I'm on the love side. I don't like the new touch controller featured on the new C-Class, so I'm glad to have the old system here.
I still have my doubts about the logic behind the Mercedes-Benz infotainment system. The other day I was looking for the ambient light settings and, well, I thought they should be in the car settings here on the center display. After about half an hour I found them here, between the dials.
Interesting options include active seats, which not only massage you, but also offer extra side support in the corners. And there's a Bang & Olufsen sound system, but I cannot demonstrate how it works, because YouTube will question copyrights for the music.
Among the less interesting options are the cup holders, which Mercedes makes us pay for some 80 euros. Now, dear Mercedes-Benz marketing experts, I'm thinking some very, very bad things about you now. It took me less than 20 kilometers behind the wheel of the Mercedes-Benz CLS to absolutely fall in love with this car. I think it's the best Mercedes that I have ever driven, and that's saying a lot because I've driven the SLS AMG, I've driven the E-Class AMG, I've driven the S-Class. Of course, if I had the money, I would buy the SLS AMG because it's just such a cool car, but it's a toy, it's a different segment. For everyday driving, I would choose the CLS any day. Of course, I'm sure it helps that this car is powered by a 3-liter V6 diesel that puts out 252 horsepower and more than 600 Nm of torque. These sort of figures aren't going to be disrupted even by the 7G-tronic, or Geriatronic as I like to call it. Speaking of which, this car is a 4MATIC, which means all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive in Mercedes speak. which is why it still has a 7-speed G-tronic rather than a 9-speed, which you would get if you had a rear-wheel drive car. The CLS accelerates from 0 to 100 km per hour in 6.7 seconds. Mercedes claims this car will do about 6 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers in the combined cycle, and I think that's very, very optimistic because I'm getting more like 9.5. If you're planning long journeys with this car, I suggest you tick the optional 80 liters petrol tank on the options list. I'll go back to handling for a minute, because a powerful engine is one thing, but the steering, well, for the first time in a long time, a Mercedes doesn't feel completely artificial. The steering is, well, engaging enough to be interesting for everyday driving, but it's not too aggressive. It gives me a very good feel of what's happening with the front wheels. With all-wheel drive, this car is glued to the road, and I just want to drive it faster and faster, which is quite unusual for me in a Merc. For me, the CLS is a brilliant combination of just the right amount of engaging driving and everyday comfort. At almost 5 meters in length, the CLS is still the smallest in its segment. I think it's as good to drive as the Audi A7 and probably even better to drive than BMW 6 Series Gran Coupe, which is a big old boat. It's also very quiet inside, even at motorway speeds, which I think is due to aerodynamics, because I can hear cars pass me by, but I can't hear the wind noise, which is very common in many other cars.
The CLS can be equipped with many safety features like adaptive cruise control, active lane assist, collision warning and mitigating system, blind spot monitoring system. You really have to try hard to have an accident in this car. Even a parking scratch will be hard to justify because Marek's 360-degree camera system is one of the best in the business.
It turns out 4-door coupes are relatively popular. Finally, you get access to the 2 extra seats you paid for, but cars like these aren't cheap. Prices of these CLS start at 55,000 euros, but a 350 4MATIC with options like this one will set you back over 100 grand. I really like the CLS and I'll be very sorry to return it tomorrow, but since you're watching it probably a couple of weeks later, I'm already devastated. So please help me overcome my sorrow and depression. Click subscribe, watch more of my reviews, share them with your friends. New episodes every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.